Good afternoon. Most welcome to Heidegger 1521 of the series. We will today continue with Of an Apocalyptic Tone, recently adopted in philosophy by Jacques Derrida. We are currently at page 10 and it's the second paragraph. And I made a little illustration here because we were thinking of tensions earlier, trying to be pedagogical here. It is absolutely necessary to think of tension as a physical thing. It's scientific. And thereby repeating Arkady Plotnitsky. Without science, there is no chance of understanding of Derrida's deconstruction. So the scientific part is of utmost pertinence for the understanding itself. These are not high-flying, empty concepts. They have to do with the physical reality. I think that's a good hint, and it was for me once I started with Derrida in the late 90s. The very idea it's abstract will obstruct all understanding whatsoever. It's a physical thing. The paragraph starts with and we've been talking about terms and atonality, or the detoned philosophy, or the detoned language of philosophy. And there we approach the more acute problem of tone. Kant does not find fault with the true aristocrats. With persons truly vornehme. With authentic distinction. Only with those who give or take themselves for distinguished beings. With the grand air of those pretentious people who elevate their voice. With those who raise the tone in philosophy. Kant does not incriminate the lofty pitch of the overloaded tone when it is just natural or legitimate.
Legitimate.
He takes aim at the rise in tone when an upstart parvenu authorizes himself to do so by giving himself as and by sporting assert signs of social membership.
Membership.
So the satire aims at the mimicry and not the tone itself. For a tone can be mimicked, feigned, faked. I shall go so far as to say synthesized. But what does the fiction of the tone presuppose? How far can that fiction go? Here, I am going to force and accelerate a bit the interpretation beyond commentary.
Commentary.
A tone
Atom.
can be taken and taken from the other.
Other.
To change a voice or mimic the intonation of the other,
Of the other.
one must be able to confuse or induce a confusion between two voices of the other, and necessarily of the other in oneself. And this is, my comment here, very important, and that's the other in oneself. To realize there is a difference, the subjective take. How we do distinguish the voices of the other in oneself. Instead of engaging myself directly in this immense problem, I return to the Kantian text and to a figure that seems to belong to the current rhetoric and to so-called used up metaphors. The question concerns the distinction between the voice of reason and the voice of the oracle.
Oracle. Voice of the oracle.
Kant is lenient with highly placed persons who devote themselves to philosophy, even if they do so badly. Multiply the faults against the school and believe they reach the peaks of metaphysics.
Metaphysics, the peaks of metaphysics.
They have a certain merit. They have condescended to mingle with the others and to philosophize on a foot of civil equality.
Equality.
On the other hand, philosophers by profession are unpardonable when they play the overload and take on grand ass.
Granas.
The crime is properly political. It is a matter for a kind of police.
Police.
Further on, Kant will speak of the police in the realm of the sciences.
Sciences.
The police will have to stay vigilant to suppress symbolically not only the individuals who improperly adorn themselves with the title of philosopher,
The title of philosopher.
who take hold of and bedeck themselves with the overlordly tone in the philosophy. But also those who flock around them for that hauntiness with which one settles on the peaks of metaphysics. That wordy arrogance is contagious. It gives rise to aggregations, congregations, and chapels.
Chapels.
This dream of a police of knowledge could be related to the plan for a university tribunal presented in Der Streit der Fakultäten.
Fakulteter.
The tribunal was intended to arbitrate the conflicts between the provisionally lower faculty and the higher faculties, so called because they represent the power whose official instrument they are. This tribunal is also a parliament of knowledge. And philosophy, which has the right to inspect everything touching on the truth of theoretical propositions, but no power to give any orders.
Orders.
Occupies in the parliament the bench on the left. And in the conflicts concerning practical reason, it has the authority only to treat formal questions. The other questions, the most serious for existence, are a matter for high faculties, singularly theology.
Theology.
In the indictment before us, philosophers by profession are not pardoned when they take on a tone overloadly, because in raising thus the tone they hoist themselves above their colleagues or fellows. And wrong them in their inalienable right to freedom and equality regarding everything touching on reason alone. And they do this precisely this is where I was wanting to come, by perverting the voice of reason, by mixing the two voices of the other in us. The voice of reason and the voice of oracle. Those people believe work to be useless in philosophy. It would suffice to lend an ear to the oracle within oneself. These are Kant's first words. Since this voice speaks to them in private, through what is properly their idiomatic feeling, their desire or pleasure, they make it say what they want. On the other hand, you do not make the voice of reason say just anything. These are the lampoon's last words, the voice of an oracle always lends itself to all kinds of interpretations.
Interpretations, Auslegungen.
The priest mystagogues are also interpreters. The element of their agogic power is the hermeneutic or hermetic seduction. The overlordly tone dominates and is dominated by the oracular voice that covers over the voice of reason. Rather parasitizes it, causes it to derail or become delirious.
Delirious.
To raise the tune in this case is to make it jump.
Jump.
Make the inner voice delirious. The inner voice that is the voice of the other in us. The word delirium appears once in Latin, inciting the verse of a monk of the Middle Ages. And on other time in the French translation for a word that interests me even more, Verstimmung. Guillermit translates Verstimmung der Köpfe zur Schwärmerei as délire de tête qui exaltant, as delirium in the heads of those who exalt themselves. And he is right. And we mentioned this before. Affection, pathos, the fire within, and in Swedish lidelse, lidenskap in Danish. The overloadly tone acts on the authority of a salto mortal or salto mortale, a leap from concepts to the unthinkable or the irrepresentable, an obscure anticipation of the mysterious secret come from the beyond. This leap toward the imminence of a vision without concepts. This impatience turned toward the most cryptic secret seats, free, apoetical, metaphorical, overabundance.
Abundance.
To that extent, this overabundance has indeed an apocalyptic affinity.
Affinity.
But Kant never speaks the word for reasons we shall glimpse in a moment. Verstimmen, which Guillermit translates not without reason by Leavey, to be delirious is first of all to put out the tune when speaking of a stringed instrument, or again, for example, a voice. This is currently said of a piano. Less strictly, this signifies to derange, to put out of order, to jumble.
Jumble.
So a few sites here I want to press extra on. Used up metaphors. This is page 10. I return to the Kantian text and to a figure that seems to belong to the current rhetoric and to so-called used up metaphors. Used up metaphors is almost like they are no longer vivid or enforced by this tension where oracle and reason goes against each other. And instead, they are both present within. One could say that the healthy opposition has been neutralized, momentarily at least. This is the concept of nullification, so important in Derrida. And the second important take is it's when the inner can speak. That disturbance which is the personality, the subjectivity, your traits, your wishes, this molestation on the pure is absolutely necessary. Of the other in oneself, you can say this is the most important sentence of this text, or 1522, or 1521. To change voice or mimic the intonation of the other one must be able to confuse or induce a confusion between two voices of the other, and necessarily of the other in oneself. And this is, of course, a very, very different take on the two hands. It doesn't even look like the two hands, the right and the left. But there is a certain parallel here. They can participate by being so different as not to become simultaneously present and thereby exposed to nullification. I decided to call it the tension of opposites, and that needs to be embodied, not verbally understood, not conceptually understood, I can say, not answerable by what, where, how, and in what form. We mentioned embodiment many times earlier. Now you will have good use for those things in the understanding of this rather cumbersome text of Derrida, no doubt. Déliré, delirious, is in a way when both of the voices are simultaneously present, not so to speak, face à face. This reminds me of what we mentioned earlier in 1516. We were speaking of the Duce, the Führer, the overlords, if you like. I will just, before I lead it to question, just read the next sentence here, because coming after where I stopped, one is delirious when one is deranged in the head. Verstimmung can come to spoil Erstimmung, pathos, or the humor that then becomes testy, becomes aggravated. Maybe a comment from my dear colleague, Kalle.
Thank you. Yes, it's a very difficult text, and I only grasped a small bit of it. It's interesting that Kant imagines a kind of police state like Plato. Plato wanted also guardians that should expel the philosophers. Should expel at least the poets, because poets are not, they make up things in Plato's view. So they are in this dichotomy, like the voice of the oracle. That is something bad for Plato. Plato wants only reason. And this here, Kant instead makes a opposition between oracle and reason. Oddly, Kant places philosophers here, but they don't have the full voice even here. The philosophers has to combat here with those who in power, like aristocrats. But here, oracle, I don't know what he means. Oracle is perhaps, who are representing the oracle in this case, I don't know. Is it the state perhaps? Who is representing oracle here? Who is delirious? Oh, a little bit crazy. I don't know. Who is representing the oracle here? Do you think, Hans? This is difficult. You have to digest this text.
Yes, and who is one of those conceptual questions? Who, what, and this is, well, let me say, more embodied, beyond conceptual analysis. And see it as why not a physicality, a scientific thing? to do with physics. We have mentioned earlier the Heraclitean debate with the physicos of the Jungian tradition of philosophy of nature and the birth of science. This is beyond conceptualization. It goes to the, if you like, the core. It's not just reason. It is reason in contradistinction to pathos, to the oracle. And the oracle cannot be sort of put into what, where, how questions or those categories, definitions. It is truly beyond. I think this is a sort of a salto mortale of the ratio. Think of this as two strings, because we spoke about toning, like toning an instrument. For music to come out of a stringed instrument, both strings need to be taut, that is, tensed. What is indicated here, the D-tone voice is not able, as you said, Kalle, not able to speak, not to give testament, if you like, or do a confession. And it is mentioned here, a stringed instrument at the very end. So think of the reason as the definitions, the what, the where, the categories, and the oracle as the other that cannot be kept or commanded by the Führer or the Duce. And in a way, I would say that is the inner. When the inner comes to the fore, this happy connection happens. In a way, it's derailed. You could say it's derailed, actually. Derailing of the reason to make it even higher. I would suggest that's my take, personal take just now. Yeah, Kalle, maybe, or no, just.
No, I don't even know because it's so difficult. I think we have to digest this text. So there is opposition, oracle, and reason, and we should find a balance. I think that is the. Oddly enough, Kant doesn't speak about oracle. So when he speaks about his state, he focuses on reason. But of course, there is in this image of theology, and it should be here probably also. Oracle, it depends what you mean with oracle. It's a big, if you think about Delphi, the oracle of Delphi, of course, there is no reason there. It's only mumblings of this wise lady, oracle lady. So okay, it's difficult. So let's continue perhaps with the text, or if you want to add something.
Yeah, oracle was good. Drug-induced, I think it was. They were using some sort of
Yes.
soma. I'm not 100% sure what they digested or ingested. But it's a very good point there. Think about the oracle that way. Beyond reason, beyond definition. Definitely beyond regular understanding in that way. And therefore, it can be in opposition. If it's not it would be no tension, it would not be taught. Taught is of course spent, not lectured. That's also important. They sound the same. I think it's an important homonym there.
What? Repeat.
Taught.
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 I will write them.
Thank you.
Taught. Maybe spelled this way. Means tension. The string is taut, but it can also mean teached. It has the same pronunciation, but different spellings. I will correct the spelling I put in the subtitle. It's not this one, but it's a very good one to think of. I say thank you very much and have a very pleasant afternoon. As Kalle said, we need to be patient with this text, of course. I will try to parallel it in different ways. Bye bye for now.
Thank you.